Hey, you guys, I'm Venus Monique from the hit crime drama Dictation, and you guys should definitely make sure you're catching the Maurice Brown Show on Roku TV.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Show. Today we have a very special guest on the Maurice Brown Show, a doctor who will talk to us about a story of overcoming abuse and abandonment through therapy and, most importantly, allowing God to take control of her life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Dr. Lynette Simm. How are you, Doctor? How's everything going?
I am doing very well. How are you, Maurice? Thank you so much for having me on the show.
It is an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. We met each other at the most recent International Christian Film Festival in Orlando, Florida this past May. And I had an opportunity to facilitate a screening of a film that you did. You also wrote a book called When the Day Came, or And the Day Came. And there it is right there, And the Day Came. And you also did a film on the subject, and that's where we met, and I had a chance to facilitate that screening, and I was very taken by the story. It was an absolute amazing story. It was a story of forthrightness and honesty that was, quite frankly and honestly, hard to discuss openly. But it needed to be done because there are a lot of people out there that are going through similar experience that you had. But before we get started, Doctor, thank you once again for being on the show. And how are you? How are things going for you?
Well, up here in North Texas, Dallas, it is exceptionally warm. We have been hitting record 100 degrees for several weeks now. It looks like for another couple of weeks. Just moved into my home, so get the pleasure of being indoors unpacking. So, I mean, aside from that, doing really well, doing exceptionally well.
And I know what I'm in Austin, so I mean, I know I feel you. It's like really hot.
And you have a bit more humidity down there than we do, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an unbelievable deal. But again, thank you we'll get through this. And when it gets cold, we'll be wishing this were still the case. We're still hot, because cold I can't stand. Anyway, I digress. Thank you once again, Doctor, for being on the show. So you're here. We're talking about a very serious subject. Usually I'm into lighthearted matters on the Maurice Brown Show, but every now and then I like to delve into something that's hard-hitting and life-changing. And your story presents an opportunity for someone's life to change. You are a victim of sexual trauma, and you talk about it openly. And again, I met you at ICFF earlier this year, and so I just like for you to talk to our audience a little bit about your experience going through that.
Well, I am a sexual trauma survivor. That kind of just encompasses everything. If it has to deal with sex and it was a trauma, I like to use that term because it covers a multitude of events that happen to individuals. I was sexually abused as a child from about 9 until about 14, almost 15 actually, by multiple people in my family, to include my dad. He is my legal dad, so he's not my stepdad, but he's not my biological father. I know, have fun with that, play with that in your mind. And other family members. And then, of course, that led to a life of being promiscuous and lots of other harmful things that one does to themselves when they feel worthless.
Yes. And the thing about that is, what happened to you being a victim of sexual trauma at such a young age, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it began when you were about 9 or 10 and lasted into your mid-teen years. And you know, when this thing happens, it's confusing, because when a loved one does this to you at a young age, you don't understand it. You don't necessarily know that it's wrong. And so it can be just a wildly confusing experience and a lot to navigate through. Take us through that, if you don't mind, Doctor.
Well, it did start when I was about 9, and it started one night. There was a conversation about where babies came from. My dad was in the other room in his bedroom. We were watching television. I'm one of 4 children, and I was asked to go ask. And unfortunately, I did not know or understand that I was asking someone who was either on drugs, I'm not sure, but definitely drunk.
Yeah.
My father was drunk pretty much our entire childhood until about 15.
Okay.
And so it was very confusing. When the sexual trauma first started, you know, I'm so young, I don't know what's going on. But as I get older, I am fully aware as to what is happening.
Right.
And then, you know, my body starts reacting. So that is repulsive and horrific. And I am deeply shamed and filled with guilt because there is connection with the abuse that is happening through no fault of my own. I'm not, you know, seeking this in any way.
Yeah.
And it was quite mortifying. It piled on a lot of lies that I was enjoying this, that it was my fault, that I wanted this, that I deserved this, and then threw on other things like I was worthless and nobody cared, nobody wanted to help me, nobody even knew what was going on, and so I was invisible.
Yeah. And the thing too, and just give fans a better idea and image and experience here of what you were going through and how this kind of all unfold. Just a fuller picture here. Your stepfather. This was at the hands of your stepfather, and he was a person that was you kind of idolized. He seemed like a really cool guy. And you know had all these things going, it seemed, for him that were great, but then when the lights went out and the evening ended, he became another person. Take us through that.
Well, anytime you deal with abuse, the person that is coming towards you, and especially if they're an alcoholic like my dad was, there is a day and night kind of person. He is a marvelous person. He is very humorous. He loves music, still does to this day. Back in the day, he, you know, was that kind of Elvis wannabe, you know, that kind of hairstyle, and our house was always happy during the day. I mean, when there were people around, and you know, but we didn't understand the shift that would happen as the parties would go down and the alcohol would increase, and the behavior that would happen afterwards. So that was Dad.
And that was the confusing thing for you, because it's like you're thinking your dad's one thing and then he becomes another. And then there were other aspects of this situation for you. You also experienced other kinds of abuse to go along with this from family members as well. To tell us a little bit about that.
Well, unfortunately, in a chaotic environment like that, my parents, because they were alcoholics, their discipline was child abuse. They would, you know, spank us bare bottom with belts, smack us across the face, smash our heads together, get switches and flip-flops and other things to hit us with. And of course, there's no communication between the two as to what is an appropriate discipline, as well as at what point is, do you get disciplined? Is it the first time? Is it the third time? Is it the 10th time? So it was quite chaotic. Add on to that, just an exceptionally dysfunctional family that, as I had stated, there was sexual abuse or incest with other family members. And so it was just one big melting pot of crazy.
Yes, yes. And take us through the healing process, Doctor. You've arrived today at a very good place. You are a very happy and lucid person. And many people would want to know, well, how in the world did you arrive at this place? How did that happen?
Well, it started at 15, when all of the trauma came to light and my father went to jail and therapy began. It started with a wonderful woman named Linda, who was a therapist back then. And so she started to work with me on identifying who I was and making sure that I truly understood that none of the things that happened were my fault. That moves forward to meeting and marrying the man of my life, Madison. And it's with his love that, again, that we have a lot of trials and tribulations in our marriage. Is exceptionally hard for somebody who may not understand the depths of abuse like that, to love somebody who has that in their life. And so we went through a lot of trials, a lot of tribulations, infidelity, abortion, all of these things, until a turning point, probably about 2003. And that's when he said, you need more help. I mean, Linda was great back then. And at that point, I'm in my early 30s. Early 30s, maybe just 31. And I find another therapist, and she's an amazing Christian therapist. And at the time, I wasn't walking with Christ. That was not me, but I needed a therapist. And she said that she wouldn't Bible thump me. And she wouldn't, spout out scripture at me. So I started seeing her. And then that was in January, actually, of 2003, now that I know for sure. And by April, my oldest daughter, Mackenzie, who is fast approaching 24 now, said, "Mom, I want to go to church." And so I'm like, okay, I want to go to church now. And she had mentioned it before. And next thing you know, it's about Easter time. And we're walking into Black Forest Chapel, a very small church in Black Forest in Colorado. And I meet Pastor James Seal, and his wife, Evelyn, and they bring me to Christ. And by that November, with therapy, with going to church, I gave my life to Christ. I walked down that aisle. I confessed all of my sins, literally at the foot of the altar. It was an amazing moment. It did take me a bit because, January to November, that's a long time. But I think with the therapist that I had, with Pastor James and Evelyn, and other Army people that the Lord had sent, Crystal and Dawn and Carmen, and I mean, he was sending all of these people. I was able to then take yet another step in healing. Then I moved to Dallas in 2012. And at that point, I met another therapist, because I started people had said, write your story, because all along, my father never divorced. My parents never divorced. And so he was constantly part of my life. And because of that, I was still very passive aggressive and very angry, but I wanted my mom, and yet I had to deal with him. And so when people would say, "Oh, you should write your story," the fact that he's in your life, and I was like, God, you don't know this. You have no idea. He's in my life, kind of that way. But lo and behold, God sends yet another Christian therapist, and we work on therapy, a specific one actually. It's called EMDR. It is a eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's the acronym. And it allowed me to be able to take away the emotions that follow all the memories. And so then my reactions would be different. It's a powerful therapeutical tool. And this amazing woman, Diane, is the one who did that for me. And in those sessions, I was able to then really decide that I was gonna write this book. I was gonna, take a moment and, write out our story. And along the way, I started talking to my parents. They had moved to the Texas area, and together I wrote And the Day Came. And so much healing. My parents said, if it's just for you, Lynette, then it's all worth it. And they would answer any question I had, like, why did it start, and why me, and how did this happen, and where did we go from here, and et cetera, to make the book, especially the past stuff of things I don't quite remember, come alive. And now the book is into a documentary, and there's even talk of a feature film. So I'm excited about that as well.
Wow, that would be really interesting. I know you've done a film. It was more of I don't know quite how to
documentary.
Yeah, it was a documentary. It had a doc vibe to it. I can't really quite describe it. It was not like a documentary I had ever seen before. It was really mesmerizing, and it was it was documented. But anyway, that being said, a feature film to come. Wow, I think that would be awesome. You had, as we speak about the doc, you had family members involved in that film. How was it getting them to agree to be a part of it?
Well, surprisingly, everybody for And the Day Came had to had to give release. So everybody's in here already. So my dad, biological dad, my legal dad, who abused me, brother, sister, mother, in-laws, husband, daughters, anybody who's mentioned in the book had to sign off on it. When I was approached by 24 Flick and Marty Jean-Louis to do the documentary, I was like, okay, in order to do it, I'm going to have everybody agree to it. And Marty was like, and your father, and I was like, ugh, I don't know. But that summer, and let's see, we're in 21. Back then, we just happened to all be together. My brother had taken my parents to California for a couple of weeks in the family RV and come back, and we were all sitting around the table at my parents' house. And by all, I honestly mean my sister was there with her son. I was there with my husband, Madison, my two girls. My brother had come with his wife and his daughter. We were only missing my other nephew and niece. They were in Wisconsin, and my parents were there. And I said, I have this opportunity, but I can't do it without you. And here's what it is. And we're either all in or it's a no-go.
Yeah.
And so I said, if you could just, raise your hand if you're okay with doing this. And so everybody said yes, everybody except for Dad. Now, Dad's problem was he lives in a small town in Texas, and he was worried that the stigma of being a perpetrator would harm his small community, because he's not knowing how far and wide God's going to take this. We have no idea how far and wide God is taking the book. But the movie, it could go even further. The feature film, I don't know. And so he's understanding all of this. So he agrees to do it under one condition. He would like to be blacked out.
Okay.
Very, very much like on the cover here, kind of that kind of background thing.
Yeah.
Mainly just so he can go to the small markets and not um, be worried about those things. Not because he was shamed. You saw the film. He's very candid, very open, very, very honest about
Yeah.
the things that had happened, how they happened, why they happened,
Mhm.
etc. And his bravery is why I'm here today, because we have an amazing book and documentary from somebody who was abused themselves, and that comes out in the documentary, that my father was abused at 7 years old by his uncle, and then by aunts and cousins, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. And he shares that. And because of that, he wants to help people. I want to help people. And because God has miraculously created us, created a family, a true, true family that is happy, who has been restored with forgiveness. He wants to share that. And so that's how the documentary came to be, because without them, it would have been a no-go.
I have a comedian friend who has a part of his merch. It says generational curse breaker. It's part of his
Mm-hmm.
merchandise. Kason Wilson, very, very funny guy. I've done a number of shows with him. And his issue was apart from yours, but it was a generational curse
Mm-hmm.
where fathers were absent.
Mm.
Fathers were consistently absent, and he wanted to break that curse. And we know through the Bible that we can break curses, because the
Absolutely.
curse is, God says, 4 generations. If someone doesn't apply the blood of Christ on that curse, because that's what it is, and
Mm-hmm.
it's biblical. It goes 4 generations, and
Mm-hmm.
so in your case, you're dealing with the situation where your dad, he was your stepfather,
Mm-hmm.
but your dad nonetheless was sexually abused,
Yes.
and then he passed that on,
Yes.
and
And we don't know what happened to all of
and we
them,
don't
but
we don't know, but
right.
you broke the curse, whether it went, who knows how far before or prior to.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we do know is you broke it. You broke that curse. You put the blood of Christ on it. And that's what has to be applied in every situation, because the devil is the one that brings despair and darkness and defeat.
Yes.
And
Unfortunately, the enemy does do that.
he does it all the time consistently, but he's a
Mm.
defeated foe. He's done.
Absolutely.
He's absolutely done.
Praise
And
God.
it takes understanding that through the blood of Christ. And short of that, he can't be stopped. But
Mm-mm.
you figured out exactly what you need. Someone came to your aid and helped you find a way to break through, and you did. Praise God.
And for me, I honestly believe it was God, because we just happened, when my dad did get caught, he went to a therapist,
Yes.
and he was like, help me figure this out. And she was like, I have to report this. And so it all blew up. And the courts had me go to this group therapy. And um, uh, to, Maurice, to see the girls around,
Yeah.
all different walks, all different colors, all different economics. It was heartbreaking. It was scary, but for the first time, I realized I wasn't by myself. So there was a
Yeah.
blessing in that. And the leader of that group was Linda, and God just said, everybody said I needed an individual therapist, and I said, well, I want her. And so
Yes.
she being a survivor herself, was a therapist and took me on as a client. And from there, God just kept sending a person, another therapist. My husband, Madison, sent me my girls. I mean, did I know that I was going to birth somebody that says, "Hey, I want to go to church. Let's go to church. Let's go
Yeah.
find Christ." You know,
Yeah.
I had no idea. And so God is the one who keeps. When writing And the Day Came, Michelle Hoffman, oh my gosh, you'll have to read How I Met Her. Total God moment. The editor, one of my friends met the editor of the book on a plane, leaving Texas to go to Colorado. It was just, it's crazy. God has been doing it. The way I met Marty Jean-Louis from 24 Flick to do the documentary.
Yeah.
Total God. So yeah, if you see him, he's there in joy. He's there in his army that he sends. He is there with just a call. All you have to do is call out to him, and that's what I did. I don't know how many years ago now. So,
well, you're doing wonders for so many people out there by talking about your experience, because I mean, men as well as women are going through this, sexually
yes,
abused, by
absolutely.
uncles, parents, cousins, you name it. It has happened to a lot of men as well as women. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
always think about the female, but men too, and they need to hear the story, because this is just an ongoing issue, and the road to forgiveness is so
Mm-hmm.
difficult. How long did it approximately for you, Lynette? How long did it take for you to actually forgive your family members?
Well, each one was different because each relationship was different.
Yeah.
To forgive my brother for leaving and going off to the army, that took a little bit. To forgive my mother, who I thought should have protected me, that took quite a long time. I would
Mhm.
say, I don't know, 15, 20 years for her. It took
Yeah.
longer to forgive my dad. It happened quite it it happened quite slowly, but then it was like when God says it is done, it was done. He was
Yeah.
turning 70, and that was 6 years ago.
Okay.
And I mean, I loved him, but there was still kind of, give him a hug on the side kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And but he was turning 70, and I was throwing him a birthday party at the house, and everybody was coming. And I want to do the little montage of photos and whatnot. And I happen to have my parents' old photos and whatnot. So I go through them, and by then I had known about his sexual abuse by his uncle, and that he was 7 years old. And I'm coming across photos of him as a baby in this, and there's this one that's 7 years old. It says so on the back of the photo. And I just start crying, because at that moment, my dad wasn't this man that had harmed me, that had taken away my innocence. That he was this little boy who the exact same thing had happened to him.
Yes.
And that revelation right there, I hugged my dad when he came for his birthday party. The first big bear hug. He was quite shocked, but he said he knew something had changed. And it was understanding and having grace and compassion for the person who was a victim just like you, because it's hurt people that are hurting.
Yes.
So it is those people that have already been wounded that way, through divorce, through fatherlessness, through death, through abuse of a variety of kinds, and alcohol abuse, food, sexual abuse, all of those addictions, sex addiction, food addiction, drugs, alcohol, etc. Those are all just manifestations of abuse and
Yeah.
of those wounds.
Yeah.
And it has been amazing these last 6 years to sit across the table from my dad, to give him a hug, hello or goodbye when I get a chance to go visit. And he's an amazing man. He cried a lot. It was the documentary was exceptionally hard for him to do. Very shameful, sharing the worst mistakes he's ever made. It was hard for me as well, writing the book as well. There's a lot of sins that I have done that I've shared, but to show people it can be done, to honestly show them. Now, I just want to put a little caveat there, a little, safeguard. Not every relationship is going to find restoration like my family did. They
Right.
just can't. You don't have the perpetrator admitting to what he did, taking responsibility for what he did, going to therapy like he did, going to group therapy like he did, staying with the family like he did, taking all of our punishment, both passive and full on aggression, and just keep saying, I love you guys. I'm going to be here. If you hate me now, that's fine. I'm still going to be here, working through all of those relationships, every single one, the one with my brother, the one with my sister, with his daughter, with me, with my mother, with all of our extended family. He just kept staying there and kept taking responsibility for all of that. There's not a lot of men out there. There's not a lot of perpetrators out there that would do that, men or women. And so this is why my story is as a survivor common, but it is glorifying because of the work that God did in my father as well as me, and allowing our family restoration to have full restoration. But the forgiveness part, because the documentary is called Tear Stained Forgiveness.
Okay.
That forgiveness part is a gift for yourself. It's not for anybody else. It's to banish the hatred, the bitterness, the shame, the guilt, all of that for you, not for anybody else. And if you never reconcile with that person, that's great. It's fine.
Well, yeah.
You're going to be all right. If you can, well, then glory be to God for that extra bit. But forgiveness itself, I would have been okay just getting to the point of forgiveness. God is the one that took it further. I think I found forgiveness by the time I was in my late 30s. By then, with the amount of therapy that I had gone through, I had forgiven them. I did not have a restored relationship with them until into my 40s, early 40s. And as we were writing the book and whatnot, but forgiveness, it's an amazing. I always tag on my books when I write in them. There's joy in forgiveness, and there truly is, and that to me is what the whole story is about.
Forgiveness is quite a powerful thing, and you can only do it through the blood of Christ. I mean, real forgiveness, and it only comes through the blood. There's a story of a preacher by the name of Smith Wigglesworth. I don't know if it's a funny name. It's not hard to forget that name once you've heard it. But he was a preacher that prior to physically abused his wife with regularity, and they were brutal abusings. And she always forgave him. She went to church. He didn't go to church. She always forgave him, and he abused her so horrifically on one evening that he left her on the doorstep. He went to bed, got up, went and expected that she'd be gone, and she was waiting there on the doorstep. Got up, made him breakfast, and said, oh no, she said, "What do you want for breakfast?" And then he sat down at the kitchen table and looked at her and said, "I want to know the God you serve." That broke him. That right there is absolutely amazing. But however far you may want to go with Christ, he'll go with you. Mm-hmm. And Christ is just amazing. And your story, no different. I mean, what you did, Doctor, I'm going to tell you right now, when I saw the film at ICFF, I never forgot it. My wife and I never forgot that film.
Thank you.
You have really extended your faith to a level where people need to know, hey, it can be done. You can get there. You can get there. It can.
It's hard. It really is. Love is hard. Forgiveness is hard. Finding peace is hard, but so worth it. Beyond words I can explain how worth it is. And the enemy makes everything else easy, and he makes it easy so that people don't put in the work. And
right, exactly.
I'm here to tell you, it was a slow and methodical process from the time the abuse came out to sitting right here with you right now. to be able to share the story without falling apart. I mean, I was sexually abused. People would fall apart. To be able to write the book, to be able to do the documentary, to be able to have relationships with my family, to have a marriage of 26 years together with my husband for 30 years, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. And anyone who says, oh, I want a divorce, it shouldn't be this hard. The pastor that you just told in the story there, it's going to be hard. It's hard work, but amazing when you get to the other side.
Utterly amazing. And I want to switch gears real quick and ask you, so a little bit, not entirely off topic, but it's a gear change. And that you have mentioned in prior interviews that I've seen that you have dyslexia. And you were able to actually not only write this book, you're actually a doctor, you have a bachelor's, I believe you have a PhD as well. Doctor, how were you able to navigate that world with dyslexia?
Well, I didn't know I was dyslexic until I was 20. I was at a community college, and it was an English class. It's actually the English class I met my husband in. And they give you this grammar sheet to find the grammar errors, and I couldn't find it. And I was like, obviously they're not all correct, teacher, so I shouldn't be in this class. And now we had gone a couple of months in the term, so she has seen my writing and whatnot. She goes, I think you're going to need to be tested. And I'm like, tested? Okay. So I go and I do these tests and blocks and all this stuff. And lo and behold, they say I'm dyslexic. And I'm like, I don't see anything upside down or backwards. I mean, the words look, this way or that way. They're not flipped or anything. And they go, no. So they explain to me what dyslexia is, and then proceed to prescribe note takers to help, because I cannot process what I'm hearing and be able to change that into symbols fast enough. So that means I can only do one or the other. And if I'm writing, then I'm not hearing. And if I'm hearing, then I can't write. And so how was I going to get through college? So they did that. My then boyfriend had bought me a book, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd never read a book, not cover to cover. I mean, I skimmed as best I could all through school, and barely graduated, like the low C, barely graduated. And that was working my tail off. And a lot of it was, how much can I absorb just hearing? And my writing was horrific. Just horrific. Not because I didn't have a voice to share, but the grammar was horrible. The spelling was horrible. The content, if you could get past those two things, meant I was comprehending. And so with Madison's help in my undergrad, he would review all of my papers. I have to have an editor. And that is a requirement when I do my writing. Somebody has to oversee it. There's no, even at this age, even as much as I've grown in my ability to read faster and process better, I still have to have an editor. So I've had an editor through my master's and my bachelor's and my master's, which was always my husband, Madison. Through my doctorate degree, which is in education, actually, I wanted to be able to rely on somebody else. And so I would go to the peers in the program, and everybody knew I was dyslexic. And so we went through there. When it came to writing, and the day came, it's Michelle Hoffman. Without her, I could not have, written the book in its entirety, because it was such a hard subject to deal with, but also the grammar and spelling and whatnot. She gave it all. I was writing in technical writing. I can do the timeline of things that happen, but it was with Michelle that you got all of the depths and the colors and the smells and the, just the richness of this, easy to read, page turning love story. And that's basically what the book is. So dyslexia has been difficult. I also struggle with ADD and OCD. My closet is exceptionally organized. Not right now because I'm moving, so please don't judge me. But so things have to be a certain way. And then, God bless Microsoft. The little, squiggly lines that when you're typing away, Without it, I could not have gone through my college degrees or even written a book, because it really does help. And then there's so much technology that really helps. I also did Dragon Dictation, so I can talk. Obviously, I can talk really well. It's just getting it from here to here. So I would dictate a lot of the book, and and that's how I do most of my writings, is dictating. So.
There's a comedian out there by the name of Brian Regan. You ever heard of Brian Regan?
I'm not sure I have, but I'm sure if I saw a photo, I might. Again, names mean nothing, pictures mean everything to a dyslexic, but go on.
He has OCD, and he's absolutely hilarious.
We can be. Some of our OCD stuff can be quite funny.
He's a clean comic, and he's one of the funnier comedians you'll ever see. But he has OCD, and he has a set that focuses on OCD, so he's actually able to make fun of himself. And you know, when people say that you have OCD, if you say you have ADD, OCD, and dyslexia, or whatever it is you may have, people in their mind, they take it to the extreme. It's never as bad as what people think. You know, people take it to the next level. So.
Well, I mean, for me, the dyslexia is the, that's the moderate. That I'm not severe, because I don't see anything upside down or backwards or have any other of those things, but it's pretty pronounced. The OCD and ADD are milder. So I have little, like when my beloved husband helps me with the laundry and he puts stuff on the wrong hangers or backwards on the hangers.
Yeah,
I can't. I can't, the way the dishwasher has to be organized, those kind of things. And so, and then, with ADD, my squirrel moments, like, what? Okay. So, staying on task and things like that. But, I did learn through my doctorate work. I did work specifically on gender differences, understanding the physiological differences and the mental differences and the learning differences of men and women, wanting to be a college professor, which I was for about 15 years, but wanting to understand why I wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia and yet every other guy was. And it's just how we present it. So, but I did learn that no disability travels by itself. If you have ADD, you tend to have a bit of something else. If you have OCD, you have a bit of something else. One is always more dominant than the other. And so, mine's dyslexia, but the other ones play, they fight for number two sometimes. So it's interesting. At least it is for me.
Doctor, if you want a really good belly laugh, look up Brian Regan, REGAN hyphen OCD.
Okay. I will definitely Google that up as soon as we're done.
I promise you will love it.
Oh, good. Yes. I do. There's so much, we need joy, and we need laughter in this world right now. So any of you that want to look up Brian Regan with us, just go right ahead, look him up, that'd be fun.
You have to look him up. He is so funny, Brian Regan. But that being said, Doctor, I was really curious about how you worked through all of that. And clearly you've done a great job of working through it. And, you've written a book, And the Day Came. And also, what is the name of the documentary? Is it by the same name, the documentary?
No. The documentary is titled Tear-Stained Forgiveness, Finding Hope and Restoration After Abuse. It's about breaking the cycle of abuse. It's about breaking those generational curses that you were talking about. And so where And the Day Came is like a autobiography memoir kind of thing. And it does talk about the sexual abuse, about this big. And then the other part talks about the healing and the other aspects that are affected by the abuse, like your marriage, your children, your self-esteem, your job. I mean, everything that's affected. And so that's the other part. But so when we wanted to do the documentary, Tear-Stained Forgiveness, we couldn't tell the whole story. And so we picked out the nugget that we really felt that would show the glory of God. And that was breaking the cycle. that it could be broken and there could be miraculous healing, miraculous grace and mercy, and in our case, restoration. And that is what came across in the documentary. The feature film is going to be a totally different look. So I like to say, I'm showing my husband, this much is the documentary, the breaking the cycle, and the feature film is going to be the love story part. It's going to be, how does someone love somebody who's been abused like this, who's so broken? And it's going to focus on Madison's love for me in a Christ-like way, his ability to show me grace and forgiveness, his ability to encourage me to seek healing, and encourage me to stay focused on what God had created, that I was a good person. His most famous, to me, statement he says to me all the time. We're driving down date night, we're holding hands, and I will say, I love you, and he says, well, you're so deserving. And it just it touches me every time that this person thinks and feels and lives and acts as if I am deserving of love. And so the feature film is going to focus on that kind of love, which is what God asks us to do. In John 13:34, it talks about we are to love one another as Christ has loved us. And Madison, even before he was walking with Christ, was showing Christ's love. And now I have the words. He is showing me the love of Christ every day in his kindness to me and his support of me. And of course, once you receive that, you just want to give it right back. And so there we have a love story. So that's what the feature film, no title yet, but I'll have to let you know when it's available, and you and your wife can watch the more fun part. The documentary is really hard hitting. It does deal with sexual abuse, it does deal with alcoholism, but it does deal with the glory of God and breaking the cycle.
Am I hearing the Kendrick brothers or Irwin brothers? Maybe.
I'm not at liberty to say yet.
Okay.
But I can let you know that the International Christian Film and Music Festival was an exceptional place to meet people. And once they saw the documentary, individuals have reached out to do the feature film because they understand what it's like to be abused, and they want to show Christ-like love when it comes to loving one another. And and that we are called to do so. We are commanded in John 13:34. He commands us to love one another as he has loved us. And the documentary is more of 2 Corinthians 5:18. Now that I have forgiven you and you're new in Christ, that's 17. Now that you are in Christ and you have been restored, you have a ministry of restoration. And that is what the documentary is about, that type of restoration. And I did not know these things when I started my path of healing. It is the therapist that I went to. It is the army of Christ that he has sent. It is the divine appointments he has created. And it is my willingness to seek him in my life. And without those things, there's no book, there's no documentary, and there's no Dr. Simm.
And you've covered just about every gamut of, and of course, this is really not true, but inside of a talk show or an interview, you've covered quite a bit of what you've gone through. But I do want to ask you this, and you may have answered it already, but I want to throw it out anyway. What message can you share with young people right now? Not necessarily young people, older people that have been through it. They're still fighting to reconcile this.
I would suggest, if I could give them a message, is first seek Christ. And the moment you do that, then he's going to send his army. And that means now go seek a therapist. Make sure that you interview them. I did that. If you do not click with them, put them aside, no harm, and go find somebody else. Make sure that they are not trying to Bible thump you or coerce you. There are some really bad people out in the world, and they're even pastors and therapists. So you really have to watch that. Look into the therapy called EMDR. It is a profound therapy that helps with trauma. Any post-traumatic stress disorders can be helped, if not completely alleviated, with this EMDR. I learned about EMDR when I was in my undergrad in psychology. I wanted to be a therapist at that time. That's not what God had planned. And I had learned about this breaking therapy called EMDR. It was helping military individuals who came after, who were out of war and whatnot, dealing with that. But the PTSD it can heal, I just can't tell you. It really did allow me to be able to have this conversation about one of the hardest things that has ever happened to me, that has affected every part of my life, every single part of my life, that has affected every decision I have made up until healing came. And now God directs every decision that I make. My family directs every decision that I make. Wisdom and experience directs those. But I didn't have any of that. And this therapy really did help. So I would suggest that find a good therapist, look into EMDR, but mainly lean into God, because he will send his army for you. You are deserving, just as Madison says, you are deserving.
There are so many victims of PTSD, undiagnosed victims of PTSD, that it is utterly mind-blowing when you really think about it. You know, it's kind of I think the treatment you received and any acknowledgement of it and addressing the issue is a serious Johnny come lately deal. My dad was in World War II, and he had periods. They weren't extreme, but he had periods of it, you know, of the stuff he saw on the battlefield. And nobody talked about, you know, the older guys that went through wars, just like, put some spit on it, rub it, and keep going. That's the era that, the era that they're all from. And so that stuff is so deep. It's mind blowing, like I said. So,
but see, that's where my dad came from. You know, he was military. He saw horrific things. He was sexually abused, horrific things. Lots of things happened to him. And so with PTSD, there's big traumas, you know, sexual abuse, war, things like that. Then there's these, smaller traumas, divorce, separation, car crash, things like these. And all of them build up until you have this complex post-traumatic stress disorder ball that is consuming your life. You know, abusive parents, neglectful parents, all of these things feed in, abusive or neglectful spouses, children, deaths. It's so amazing that people back then would just not talk about it. No. It just didn't happen. You just got over it. You just put your big girl pants on or your big boots on, and all of the euphemisms that it was, let it roll off your shoulder, get over it, forgive and forget, which is malarkey. How are we supposed to forget, you know? So, and we're not called to forget. We're called to forgive. And we're called to use those experiences, those memories, to better ourselves. So to forget would be sticking our hand in the fire every time, not remembering that it burns. And so, PTSD is overwhelming. And the more people are hurtful, the more they have some traumatic events that are plaguing their life. The more that they are abusive, they have traumatic events covering their life. And the enemy is just feeding into it. And so that's why I say you have to lean into Christ first, because the minute you ask for his help, it is like doors open. And they're slow. Okay. Again, I was 15 by the time I'm like, everything's amazing, which is where I am now. It probably took a good 25, 30 years, but there was a slow progression. Each step there was I'm valuable, so I didn't want to kill myself anymore, because I at that point I did. There
Yeah.
was, finding my husband. Oh my gosh, our family's riddled with divorce. He's going to leave me, etc. All of these things, and each step, each therapist, each moment, I learned more and grew more, until here I am at 50 going, life is amazing. I
Yeah.
wouldn't wish my childhood on anyone, but I would definitely walk with anybody going through that, because there's so much joy that comes from all of that, so
Yeah.
much experience. I used to pray, God, please make me stronger, please make me stronger, so no one would hurt me anymore. And instead he was like, no, I'm going to show you what compassion is. I'm like, oh. So there you go.
Wow. And that's how God is. God is going to take you by the hand, and he's going to walk you through some things that you'd rather not. But the thing is, he's got your hand, and you're going to get through it, and you're going to be better when you get
Absolutely.
to the other side of it. That's how
Absolutely.
good God is, and there's no question about that. Doctor, this has been an awesome convo. I've loved it, and I think it's been so helpful to those that have a chance to watch it. I just thank God that you have the bravery, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, to talk about it openly. You're going to help a lot of people. God bless you. I want you to, real quick, before we step out, tell our viewers how they can get a copy of your book, And the Day Came.
Well, I'm going to plug it again.
Yeah.
And the Day Came. Of course, you can reach out to me. You can do that via email. My website is still being worked on because of the documentary, and they also want to be able to have room for when the feature film comes to get it. So you can't do it that way, but you can reach out to me at via email. That's DRLM as in Mary, Essence and Sam 96 at gmail.com. I can send you a copy, a signed copy. Or you can go to Amazon, or where books are sold. They're available there, and it's also available on Kindle.
Okay, there you go. And there's the website right there, drlms96 at gmail.com, if you're interested in getting a copy of her book, And the Day Came. If you have enjoyed our conversation, like it and share it, and subscribe to the Maurice Brown Comedy channel, as well as any social media engine you may happen to find Dr. Lynette Simm a part of. And if you missed it, you can watch the replay on Facebook and YouTube. Also tomorrow about midday on Roku TV, you can see this interview in its entirety on the Creative Motion Network. And you can also, by tomorrow, hear this on the audio platform of Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, Audible, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Radio Public, and Stitcher. So you see, you can need, and Anchor, by the way, as well. So we got you covered in all kinds of ways.
And Maurice, can I
yeah.
share that the documentary is going to be shown in the Dallas area, September 23rd, I believe it is. It's a Saturday. Forgive me if I have the date wrong yet, but I believe it's the 23rd. And it's going to be on 24flick.com. It's a family-friendly streaming service that is free. It will be running on 24flick after the release in the Dallas area. And then, of course, I have been already asked to bring the documentary as well as my book and present in Ohio, in Florida, in Colorado. So if you need or would like me to come and share the documentary, the book, and a message of joy and forgiveness, you can reach out to me via my email as well.
Awesome. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, once again, you're watching the Maurice Brown Show. We've been talking with Dr. Lynette Simm. And again, Doctor, thank you so much for being on the show. May the peace of Christ be with you and your family. God bless you.
And you, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Amen. Amen.